Today we're exploring the question, how long are the days of creation in Genesis? If you didn't grow up in the church, you might be surprised to learn that Christians have debated this topic for nearly all of church history, and Jewish thinkers were also discussing these questions even before Christianity existed. So today we're going to look at the two main views that Christians hold and some of the arguments that people make for each of these views. Let's start by reading Genesis chapter 1 and the first 2 verses of Genesis 2 to see what the text actually says and what the disagreement is based on. Okay, here we go. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was formless and empty, darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw that the light was good, and he separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning the first day. And God said, "Let there be a vault between the waters to separate the water from water." So God made the vault and separated the water under the vault from the water above it, and it was so. God called the vault sky, and there was evening, and there was morning the second day. And God said, "Let the water under the sky be gathered to one place, and let dry ground appear," and it was so. God called the dry ground land, and the gathered waters he called seas, and God saw that it was good. Then God said, "Let the land produce vegetation, seed-bearing plants and trees on the land that bear fruit with seed on it, according to their various kinds," and it was so. The land produced vegetation, plants bearing seed according to their kinds, and trees bearing fruit with seeds in it according to their kinds. And God saw that it was good, and there was evening, and there was morning the third day. And God said, "Let there be lights in the vault of the sky to separate the day from the night, and to let them serve as signs to mark sacred times and days and years. And let them be lights in the vault of the sky to give light on the earth," and it was so. God made 2 great lights, the greater light to govern the day, and the lesser light to govern the night. He also made the stars. God set them in the vault of the sky to give light on the earth, and to govern the day and the night, and to separate the light from darkness. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening, and there was morning the 4th day. And God said, "Let the water teem with living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the vault of the sky." So God created the great creatures of the sea, and every living thing with which the water teems and that moves about in it, according to their kinds, and every winged bird according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. God blessed them and said, "Be fruitful and increase in number, and fill the water in the seas, and let the birds increase on the earth." And there was evening, and there was morning the 5th day. And God said, "Let the land produce living creatures according to their kinds, the livestock, the creatures that move along the ground, and the wild animals, each according to its kind." And it was so. God made the wild animals according to their kinds, the livestock according to their kinds, and all the creatures that move along the ground according to their kinds. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, "Let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish in the sea, and the birds in the sky, over livestock and all the wild animals, and over all the creatures that move along the ground." So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God he created them, male and female he created them. God blessed them and said to them, "Be fruitful and increase in number, fill the earth and subdue it, rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, and over every living creature that moves on the ground." Then God said, "I give you every seed-bearing plant on the face of the whole earth, and every tree that has fruit with seed in it. They will be yours for food, and to all the beasts of the earth, and all the birds of the sky, and all the creatures that move along the ground, everything that has breath of life in it, I give every green plant for food." And it was so. God saw all that he had made, and it was very good. And there was evening, and there was morning the 6th day. Thus the heavens and the earth were completed in all their vast array. By the 7th day God had finished the work he had been doing, so on the 7th day he rested from all his work. Then God blessed the 7th day and made it holy, because on it he rested from all the work of creating that he had done. So we learn from the text that God is the creator of everything in the universe: space, plants, animals, people, everything. But the text doesn't specify how God does this, whether it's out of nothing or out of existing life forms or instantly or gradually. And while we'd find that information very interesting, Genesis is not a scientific textbook. It's one book in the story of God's relationship with people. And so there's a lot that it leaves out, and that allows us to follow the evidence wherever it leads. And so with that, let's get into the two main ways that Christians interpret the text we just read. The first view is that the creation days in Genesis are literal 24-hour periods of time. This view is often called young earth creationism. Often, people who hold this view believe that the text naturally reads like a series of 24-hour days because each day includes phrases like evening and morning. As well, they may reference passages like Exodus 20:11, which connects Israel's 6-day work week and 1 day of rest to God's creation pattern. That text says, "For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea and all that is in them, but he rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy." If this literal view is true, then that would make the earth somewhere between 6,000 and 10,000 years old. And the idea comes from adding together the genealogies and the timelines in the Bible, starting with Adam, that first person, and then tracing history forward to the present day. Of course, there are a lot of things in the natural world that seem to suggest that the earth is much older than that, and young earth creationists often respond by arguing that the earth may look older than it really is. For example, if God created Adam as an adult, not as a baby in the womb, then Adam would have appeared mature even on the first day of existence, and that in the same way the earth may have been created mature from the very beginning, which makes it seem or appear much older than it actually is. The second view is that the creation days in Genesis may represent longer periods of time. This view is often called Old Earth creationism, and here's the thinking behind it. First, the Hebrew word for day in Genesis is yom, and depending on the context, that could refer to a normal 24-hour period, but it could also be a portion of the day, like the sunny time of day, or it could be an era. And in English, it works similarly, right? We might say, "I'll see you in 2 days," or "back in the day," or "in the days of the Roman Empire," where we're using the word day to refer to a longer span of time rather than a literal 24-hour period. There's variation. As well, in the Bible, there's another passage that says, "With the Lord, a day is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years are like a day." And while this verse isn't directly interpreting Genesis, it is an example that the Bible does not always use the word day or time language in a strictly literal sense. But moving on, Old Earth creationists may also point to other clues in Genesis that they believe suggest that the passage may not describe literal 24-hour days. For example, God doesn't create the sun until the 4th day. So we might ask, well, what would define a normal solar day before that? On this very point, the 2nd and 3rd century church leader Origen, he argued that the creation days in Genesis should not be understood as literal 24-hour days. He wrote, "For who that has understanding will suppose that the first and second and third day and the evening and the morning existed without a sun and moon and stars, and that the first day was, as it were, also without a sky." As well, the 7th day is when God is resting from creation, and it never ends with the phrase, "There was morning and there was evening." And so alongside that, in other passages like Hebrews 4, which describe God's rest day as ongoing, some Christians see that as evidence that at the very least, this last day was not a literal 24-hour day. Another reason people suggest the creation days are not literal is because we can see a structured literary pattern in the text. The first 3 days focus on creating environments, and then the next 3 days focus on filling those environments. For example, on day 1, God creates light and darkness, and then on day 4, he creates the sun and the moon and the stars to govern them. Or on day 2, he creates the sky and the seas, and then on day 5, he fills them with birds and sea creatures. Or on day 3, he creates land and vegetation, and then on day 6, he fills the land with animals and humans. And so the structure may suggest that the author was prioritizing theological truths and literary design rather than giving strict chronological timelines. But I want to pause and point out that everything that I've said so far, everything we've talked about, comes from the biblical text itself. On its own, the text allows for these different interpretations of the creation days. But we'd be leaving out something important if we didn't also mention that people who hold an old earth creationist view also argue that the natural world around us gives us clues about its age through things like radiometric dating or the fossil record or plate tectonics or tree rings, ice core data, cosmic microwave background radiation, distant starlights, and many more things. And each of these lines of evidence seems to suggest that the Earth is billions of years old, and old Earth creationists argue that we can use strongly supported scientific evidence to help inform our interpretation of Scripture, similar to how evidence that the Earth rotates and orbits the sun helped many Christians understand passages like God set the earth on its foundations, it can never be moved, as poetic language rather than as literal scientific statements. Before we end, I want to point out that holding an old Earth creationist view is not the same thing as accepting evolution in the full neo-Darwinian sense. Those are related but separate conversations. So some old Earth creationists believe that God created different forms of life separately over long periods of time. Others accept limited evolution within species, but not the idea that all life shares a common ancestor. And then others accept what's called theistic or guided evolution, the idea that God used evolution as part of the creation process. And if you like, we can cover that in more detail, those different ideas, another time too. Just, let me know in the comments if that would be interesting to you. So are the days of creation in Genesis literal 24-hour periods or eras? The text leaves it open to debate, and Christians have been debating this since the early church, which I hope will give us some humility about whatever position that we take on the matter. The main point of Genesis, the thing that all Christians can agree on, is that God is the creator of everything. So in the comments, I'm curious what your view is. Are you a young Earth or old Earth creationist, and why? And if you're an old Earth creationist, I'd personally be curious to hear about your thoughts on the process you think God may have used. A couple of books I've personally appreciated on this topic are 7 Days That Divide the World by John Lennox, and then Why the Universe is the Way It Is by Hugh Ross. I'll link to both in the description below. And if you would like to see more content like this, I would encourage you to check out other videos on the channel or click the subscribe button just below this video, and then I will see you next week. Thank you so much.